Good evening and welcome to the Round Lake High School Media Center on August the 7th, 2023 at 7:01 p.m. to call this regular meeting of the Round Lake Area School District Board of Education to order. If I can get started first with a roll call, please.
Miss Lee?
Here.
Mrs. Klingler?
Here.
Mr. Jewett?
Here.
Mr. Tavera? Mr. Francisco? Mrs. McGinley?
Here.
Thank you. And first up is the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Just a reminder for board members, if you make sure your phones are off the tables and on silent. First up is approval of meeting agenda. We have an agenda in front of us. If I can get a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Jewett, seconded by Ms. Lee. Roll call, please.
Mrs. McGinley?
Yes.
Mr. Francisco?
Yes.
Mr. Tavera? Mr. Jewett,
Yes.
Mrs. Klingler,
Yes.
Miss Lee.
Yes.
Motion carries. We have an approved agenda, and first up on that agenda are communications to the board. And actually, the first three will be basically me. I'm going to lump A and B together. NSBA National Conference is April 6th to 8th, and the COSBA National Conference is February 22nd to 25th. NSBA is in New Orleans, COSBA is in Dallas. So we need to figure out who can make it, who wants to go to the events. On average, we normally do 3 to each. We basically have the budgetary to send 6 people, whether it's 3 and 3 or however we do that. I'll start the conversation. I can't go to COSBA because of the February dates, so the only one I could go to is going to be NSBA in New Orleans. And then talking with Peg, she did say to let everybody know that she's basically in the same boat. The February one, she wouldn't be able to finagle the work as easily as the NSBA in April. So if she, and again, she's not married to having to go to one, but it definitely is good for all of us to try and attend. I'll open it up and hear what everybody else is looking at.
Probably April. For me.
Yeah, and Miss Lee is the only one who did not go to one last year, so you're at the top of the list for picking which one you want. So let's just consider you. You're locked in April with New Orleans. Done.
I could do either one.
Dallas it is.
I'd like to go anywhere in February.
Dallas it is.
Yeah, it doesn't matter to me, but if, just keeping the tally here, we have, if you go in April and Peg goes in April, Julie's
That
April,
basically fills up.
and we have Scott and John for Dallas. Huh?
I said we need a super.
You need a supervisor for Dallas. I went last year as well, so I will give priority to anybody else.
Well, at this point, basically, it's you and Kevin are.
You got 2 and 2, you said, at this point?
Well, we got 3 and 2 actually. We got 3 in New Orleans at this point, which would be myself, Peg, and Julie. And then right now we got Jen and Scott running off to the warm lands in February.
Is there a reason why all 7 couldn't just go? I think you said we budgeted for 3 and 3, right?
Yeah.
I mean, what's one additional board member?
Well, I
gonna
would
make?
ask.
We can support an additional board member if that's the desire of the board. That won't be a problem.
I know we can support one
I
additional.
was going to say, my next question was going to be to the finance committee. So
Yes,
there you go.
we can definitely
Well,
support.
if that's the case, then where do you two want to go? And what's,
Well, if I have a choice, I'll go February, New Orleans.
okay, so February is Dallas.
Yeah.
New Orleans is April.
April, I'm sorry, April. April.
We should just all go to both, I think.
That we cannot support.
Yeah,
That's
that
a no.
we cannot support.
That's a no.
That's a hard no, actually.
No.
Well, so then
I'll go
Dallas-
to Dallas.
All right, so then what I'm hearing is 4 to New Orleans, which would be myself, Peg, Julie, and Mr. DeVera. And we got 3 going to Dallas, which would be Jen, Scott, and Miss Annette. Any additional questions in regards to that?
I think we're good.
I think we're good. All right, next up then is the special committee appointments, naming a facility. This is so that we can complete the committee assignment for the naming naming convention on the facility that we've got over at Calvary, at the former Calvary Church. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to open it up. I need a board member from Community Relations and a board member from Facilities to be able to volunteer to, do we have any dates?
Finance, you mean?
Well,
Finance slash
fi-
facilities.
Yeah, from technically the complete sitting, which is finance, but I know facilities is an ad hoc, so I apologize for that terminology. Do we have a date or?
No, but I'll work around the
Okay.
committee member schedules.
So if I, do we have, there, okay, so Ms. Klingler will
I
be
guess
able-
I was just appointed, so. So it'd be myself.
Okay, then I will make and this committee is one that we definitely need to work with them and make sure that you attended at the time that they've got it going, because this isn't one we can miss. Because we definitely need to make sure we have the community, being represented when it comes to how we name the facility. So, we've got Annette and Ms. Klingler, and if you got any additional questions, that's the appointment. All right, next up then is going to be the review of the FOIA report, which was in the package. Does anybody on the board have any questions in regards to the FOIA report? Hearing none, we will then move on to review contracts less than 1,000. Any questions on those three?
No questions. You saw that there's one that's actually $0 and then the two school
Yep.
dances for the middle schools.
And I was going to ask for finance input on that one, so thank you. All right, hearing nothing there, then we will move on and out of communications, and we will head to opportunity for public comment. As always, members of the public may participate in public comment during regular board meetings by attending in person or by submitting an electronic public comment form. Please note that in all aspects, the speakers are limited to 3 minutes. Electronic public comments are accepted up until noon on the day of the regularly scheduled meeting, and the public commenter would be contacted to confirm identity. Once confirmed, the electronic public comment will be provided to all board members in written form. There was not any electronic public comment for this meeting. We do have one public comment form, Mr. Husk. So please step up, and we look for.
Hi, y'all. My name is Chuck Husk. I'm a longtime resident of Round Lake Beach, and wife and I are raising one of our grandchildren. And there was a situation that happened over at Beach School with some bullying. How are we handling that kind of stuff?
So I certainly can defer to Mr. Francisco, but public comment is not designed to get into a back and forth engagement process. We absolutely are willing to address whatever questions you have, and we'll spend as much time as you want addressing that. It wouldn't be in this forum though, but I can have Dr. Apgar, who oversees kind of student services, actually walk out with you, make sure he has your information, and he'll follow up with you tomorrow.
One other comment that we did, wife and I are looking at is, I guess there's some new laws for board members to take some training as far as management of situations. Are the board members going to be doing that?
So our board participates in a variety of professional development activities and is always current on all things that are required for them and more.
Thank you. Do we have any additional public comment from the gallery? Nothing from Mr. Coppola? All right, then we will move on, and next up is our superintendent's report, and I will turn it over to Dr. Mendoza.
Thank you, Mr. Francisco and Board of Education. For your convenience, in this week's superintendent's report, we have included a comprehensive list of open house dates and back to school events scheduled at the schools this fall. Outlook invitations have been sent to each board member. Additional calendar invitations will be sent this week by Ms. Garcia. We'd like to extend a huge thanks to 3 community partners for hosting a variety of service and family events for the district's families this past weekend. These include Heritage Church's Beautification Project at Murphy, New Hope Christian Community Church's Back to School Bash, and the Chicago Bears Back to School event at Hallis Hall. Last Thursday, Ed Red hosted a legislative breakfast where area superintendents, school board members, and state representatives and senators came together to discuss legislation's impact on public education. Some of the topics focused on staff hiring and retention, the teacher shortage, school safety, and communication. Thank you, Board President Francisco, for representing the board at this event. I would also say we finally made formal contact with our state senator. We've not been super successful at facilitating formal contact. It's not good or bad, but with Senator Bush, we had regular meetings. I've personally reached out to Senator Edley Allen multiple times. Ms. Bennett has. I finally got her cell number, and she's going to be coming out and visiting with us. I think it's really, really important. Quite often, they'll text me literally on the General Assembly floor when bills are being debated, sometimes with 15 minutes notice before a vote's called. So it's pretty important that we have a direct line. So I just want to say that was a good opportunity for me to kind of, I don't know how else to say it, but to facilitate a meeting. Last week, the administration met as a team to kick off the school year. Day 1 session focused on setting the stage for the school year, finance updates, an exercise to analyze the results of the staff experience and climate survey, communication, safety, tech, operations, and human resources. We actually call it an advance, not a retreat, because a retreat, you're going backward. So we're moving forward. Day 2 targeted teaching and learning departments, specifically MTSS, special education, language learners, professional learning, ed tech.
To approve the minutes of the July 17th, 2023 regular board meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Jewett, seconded by Ms. Lee. Any questions? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Klingler,
Yes.
Miss Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Francisco,
Yes.
Mr. Jewett,
Yes.
Mrs. McGinley,
Yes.
Mr. Tavera,
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, moving on to the consent agenda. I need a motion to approve the consent agenda for the accounts payable report for $1,526,168.26. The August 7th, 2023 employment report.
So moved.
Second. Motion by Ms. Klingler, seconded by Mr. Francisco. Roll call, please.
Mr. Tavera,
Yes.
Mrs. McGinley,
Abstain.
Mr. Jewett,
Yes.
Mr. Francisco,
Yes.
Miss Lee,
Yes.
Mrs. Klingler,
Yes.
Motion carries. All right. Next up is the old business, and this is just our board superintendent communication. Did not see any communications back and forth, so I'm assuming no one on the board had any updates to it.
Nope.
Hearing none, we'll
Right. I need a motion for the approval of the board superintendent communication expectations, mutual agreement, and social media agreement.
so moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Francisco, seconded by everybody. We'll go with Mr. Jewett and roll call, please.
Mrs. Klingler,
Yes.
Mr. Francisco,
Yes.
Mrs. McGinley,
Yes.
Miss Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Tavera,
Yes.
Mr. Jewett,
Yes.
Motion carries. All right, next up, we are in the new business, and we've got the first reading of board policy. Any questions from the board on what we're seeing there? Want to get any clarifications? If you don't have it now, between now and our next meeting when we have the final reading, please make sure to forward them to Ms. Bennett and the rest of the team as well, so we can get those questions answered for you. Hearing none, we will now move on to the 2023-2024 student handbook changes.
So we put into the packet today just an update on how we're going to proceed with the review of the handbook. And we are making some changes heading into the 24-25 school year. So over the next week or so, we're going to get either one or two meetings scheduled, one with staff to review the handbook and any changes that were necessary due to legislative changes over the last year, and just a review of our discipline and behavior and discipline procedures. And then we'll do the same with a select group of parents at each of the levels. So we will do this kind of in two phases heading into 24-25. At the end of this school year, we'll be meeting with staff to talk about like the legislative changes. And then as we head closer to the school year, we'll do the full review before the start of the school year. We're probably about a week or so behind schedule for this year, but we'll be coming back at the second August meeting with any changes within the handbook. I don't anticipate any major things outside of what was changed through legislative action this last year.
Thank you for that. Any questions from the board? Excellent, thank you. Next up is the approval of the new internet service opportunity, the ICN.
I need a motion to approve, to authorize the superintendent to enter into the attached agreement with ICN and to authorize the superintendent or his designee to execute any and all documents related to the agreement.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Klingler, seconded by Ms. Lee. Any questions for the administrative team?
No questions, but if I could speak to it,
Please
this
do.
was at finance the last time. The ICN being the acronym for Illinois Century Network. We spoke to this at finance. This is a connectivity agreement for just Indian Hill and McGee. This would be 100% reimbursable. It's 90% E-rate, and then that 10% coming from that other grant with the connectivity. This will be a higher connectivity. We're using it at Indian Hill. And so this is a 5-year agreement, but again, it's only that school.
All right, hearing no additional questions, roll call please.
Mr. Tavera?
Yes.
Mrs. McGinley?
Yes.
Mr. Jewett?
Yes.
Mr. Francisco?
Yes.
Miss Lee?
Yes.
Mrs. Klingler?
Yes.
Motion carries.
I need a motion to approve the Springfield field trip for 7th graders at McGee Middle School on October 6, 2023, and Round Lake Middle School on October 13th, 2023.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Tavera, seconded by Ms. Lee. Any questions or clarifications from the board? I'm trying to say Springfield field trips real fast as well.
That's why I stumbled. I'm sorry, you're going to say something?
Just point out, this is something we've done annually. It's a great opportunity for our students to go down and see Illinois history and learn a little bit about how our state government works, as Dr. Mendoza mentioned earlier in the meeting. So I think it's a great opportunity for our kids.
The only question I had is how soon will the communication go out to the parents?
I can double check with each building administration, but I know they like to get that going right away as the students return.
Yeah, that's what I was asking, because they come back in October, is going to be here before we know it.
So I can follow up and get those dates to you, but like I said, they do like to hit the ground running on this one.
We'll send something in this Friday's weekly regarding when the
Okay.
communication is going out.
Thank you.
I know some sophomores, some rising sophomores that didn't get this opportunity, so I'm kind of sad, but. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Klingler?
Yes.
Miss Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Francisco?
Yes.
Mr. Jewett?
Yes.
Mrs. McGinley?
Yes.
Mr. Tavera?
Yes.
And motion carries.
Need a motion, excuse me, a motion to approve The additional coach stipends requested are including 1.0 cross-country assistant coach at Round Lake High School, 1.0 wrestling assistance coach at McGee Middle School, 1.0 assistant track coach at McGee Middle School, and 1.0 assistant coach at Round Lake Middle School, for a total increase in stipends of $19,534.54.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Jewett, seconded by Mrs. Klingler. I'll start the quick questions. Do you know, I know that we're still looking at this, but especially with cross-country assistant, what is the time frame that we're looking at on being able to get that filled? Because cross-country literally started at 8 o'clock this morning.
Yeah, so the hope is if we get approval today, we can get posted. We do have some internal candidates that have expressed some interest, so we should be able to turn that around pretty quick.
I'll turn it over to finance.
Yes, I was just gonna say, this came to finance, obviously the increase in stipend, of course, that's effect on the budget. But also keeping in mind the safety of the students. Our cross-country team is really large, and just to keep a ratio, our AD, Mr. Karolzak, looking at guidelines of what other schools are using and keeping the safety of our students, which is why you see the increase of those that they're asking. And he also mentioned that in his last presentation.
Thank you. Hearing no additional questions, we will go with roll call, please.
Mrs. Klingler,
Yes.
Miss Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Francisco,
Yes.
Mr. Jewett,
Yes.
Mrs. McGinley,
Yes.
Mr. Tavera,
Yes.
Motion carries. All right, next up is Dr. Kibbens.
Good evening. I am here to share with you our tentative fiscal 24 budget. Just a reminder where we get the fiscal 24 numbers from. That's always the back end or the second half of our school year number. So we are entering the 23-24 school year. That's why we call this fiscal 24. Last year we were in the 22-23 school year, and then that would be fiscal 23. So I've had some questions about that, and I just wanted to clarify for you as we go along. I'm going to talk a little bit about the process, and let's see if the clicker will work, and it's not. But, okay. It has a mind of its own. Okay. So starting off with the fiscal 24 tentative budget process. We are required as a school district to ensure that our budget is on display for at least 30 days to the public. That is the reason why we are moving forward with this August 7th date. Typically, our cadence would have been that we would have gone to a finance committee meeting first, had those conversations, and then presented to the board. But based on our scheduling, we needed to present that this evening to be in alignment with 30-day responsibilities. Pending Board of Education approval this evening, we will also set a tentative hearing date, and that date would be for Monday, September 21st at 6:55 p.m. So pending your approval, we will get that notification published and invite our community, if they so wish, to present any questions they have. The legal notice must be published in a publication that is in a local circulation, and that local circulation that we use is the Lake County News Sun. And the clicker is still working. Okay, moving forward with the next parts of our process. The final budget must be approved by the Board of Education by September 30th. We certainly will meet that guideline with the tentative date being September 21st. We also need to make sure that our final budget is submitted to our Regional Office of Education, in addition to having that budget submitted to the Illinois State Board of Education. Here you have an example of what that public notice hearing will look like, and you can read the fine print. I cannot, but the fine print lists that we are going to post a public hearing. Tentative budget revenues, looking at how our budget was created, we still to this date do not have our evidence-based funding numbers. So our budget is based on a flat number that we know that is available to us, and that would be our fiscal 23 evidence-based funding number. It's a very conservative approach, but it's an approach I feel very comfortable with, knowing that that was funded last year. Also a reminder for the board and our community that we receive about 31% of our local property tax collection. That is our base on the local side. In addition to state and federal grants that we're very fortunate and appreciative to receive, we also have been very aggressive with the support of the Board of Education for interest on our investments, and also rebates from procurement cards. In addition to, we have a few dollars left in the ESSER 3 funding for this year. As we also look at other parts of our evidence-based funding, as a reminder, as I said, we are looking at us on our basis of last year. Last year would have been fiscal 23. Fiscal 23, we were provided in our Tier 1 status at $70,186,705.55. The year prior was fiscal 22. That was also at a Tier 1 status at $66,662,330.87. So again, fiscal 24 has not been confirmed, but the fiscal 23 Tier 1 EBF number is the placeholder in our current budget, and we have no reason to believe that our status has changed. We still remain a Tier 1 school district. As we then look at our expenditures, we've got the revenues stated as what those estimates are. We also have some estimates on the expenditure side. Our salaries, we know we still have some hiring to do, so there's a placeholder for those places that haven't been filled yet. We also have some tentative staff insurance costs that are listed. And then also in this budget, we know that with the return to learn of our PLEVAC students, there is a classroom mobile unit, a 2-classroom mobile unit with water and bathroom. That is also figured into this expenditure, in addition to a $4 million transfer from Fund 10 through Fund 60 for the EEC. You will see a resolution from me at the August 21st meeting officially approving that transfer over. As a reminder, we have a commitment as a district to fund the EEC project, in addition to the very generous foundation that we'll be funding, but we have to front those dollars in advance. So we're planning for that as well in this tentative budget. So as we overall look at our operating funds are where our financial profile score is computed, our report card, as we say. So looking at the overall revenue of the operating funds, and the operating funds are Fund 10, which is the education fund, Fund 20, which is the operation and maintenance fund, Fund 40, which is transportation, and Fund 70, which is working cash. All of those overall revenues are $126,786,127,000. On the expenditure side of those same operating funds, we are estimating an expenditure of $122,471,583. So that is a difference right now, again, of a flat basis with our Tier 1 EBF funds of $4,314,544, and that represents a balanced tentative fiscal 24 budget. This is what the State of Illinois form looks like that we send to Springfield, and it lists that we are a balanced budget. No deficit reduction plan is required. Once we finalize this budget, this will go again to our Lake County Regional Office of Education, in addition to Springfield. Any changes that are needed to be made between now and the final budget that's presented September 21st, I will report to the board as such, from where we are at this point in time to then the final budget. So just an overall summary of our fiscal 24 tentative budget this evening. Our expenditures overall do not exceed our revenues. Our evidence-based funding EBF model is still at a Tier 1 status. We will continue to monitor staff and student needs for the 2023-2024 school year. We will certainly always maintain our fiscal prudence. We will certainly adhere to Round Lake School District Board of Education policies. And at this point, I am recommending a tentative fiscal 24 balanced budget, and also asking for approval of a public hearing date of September 21st, 2023. Some unknowns that are still out there that have been consistent unknowns. It may be that there's unfunded mandates that we're required to respond to. We want to make sure we stay in alignment with that. Property tax collection as well. I watch that very closely, what those dollars are coming into our district. In addition to property tax appeals, if there are such in the community, that's something we've been very responsive to and will continue to be. We also know that in this budget fiscal year, there may be some unknown PLEVAC unanticipated expenditures. We need to make sure we keep an eye on that. And then if there are also some unanticipated staffing changes. So with that being said, we'd just like to remind the Board of Education and really commend you for your work. Our financial profile scores represent the hard work and decisions of this board. In the year 2019, which would have been an annual financial report that's always a year behind, it was a 3.60, which is a recognition status. Year 2020, AFR Annual Financial Report 2019, 3.6 recognition. Year 2021, Annual Financial Report 2020, 3.60 recognition. So very consistent with what you've done. Huge pat on the back. And a final Go Panthers. Congratulations on all your work.
Thank you, Dr. Kibbins. Any questions for Dr. Kibbins?
No questions, but I did want to just report to the board that I met with Dr. Kibbins prior to this presentation. So I met with her last week going over the 24 budget, fiscal year 24 budget. Knowing as we're looking at that budget, as Dr. Kibbins pointed out, we have a big transition that happens next year with bringing in the plevia kids, moving from a neighborhood school model to a partner school model, the bringing in of the mobile units with that transition to our model type. So again, just making sure, but as you see, it is a balanced budget, and we will continue to do so.
I've got a question. Are we holding on to any, okay, with the EBF funding, went up about 5% year over year, 22 to 23. If we see a 5% increase year over year again, does that mean additional programming? What does that typically mean?
That's hard. So what I would say is we should not be having very much net addition of staff because our enrollment's declining. Every year, regardless of what we're doing with I wouldn't say regardless, we've seen a very nice steady increase of EBF funding. It doesn't necessarily mean new programming in addition to, it could be in lieu of. So every year when we're going through our budget assumptions, we're constantly looking at existing programming, what are the needs of the students. If we need addition to, we'll bring that to the board, but sometimes it's something new, but we're going to discontinue this. Like I can tell you right now, I might as well just talk about it now. One of the things that I think we're going to look at is potentially some alternative programming resulting from some of the staff feedback we got on the climate culture survey. We're going to be bringing some of that information back to you at the next board meeting. So I would say not necessarily. It doesn't mean it's in addition to. What I will say though is, and I'm ballparking it, but I'm pretty close. And it's not unique to us, but just to pay for our teacher contract is $3 million a year in new revenue. I'm ballparking it. That's salary, benefits, which is not unique to this year. So, you know, if you think about that, I mean, the kind of, and you think of a 5% increase, that's why it's so important. We have to always look at everything in total. So But we're going to follow our budget assumption process. You should expect to be hearing things in January again regarding programming for next year. One of the things we'll point out is we'll also talk about, that's why also in the budget assumption, sometimes you'll see savings listed is because we've decided to discontinue A, B, or C.
Yeah, I was just gonna add, I know you see that increase, it doesn't mean we have extra money, cause it's keeping up with costs, like salaries. We know technology is increasing, the insurance, all the stuff that we offer, even staff outside of, unless he includes that in salaries, but we still have those costs to incur.
And I was just asking because I've been with organizations that have like 3 budgets. They have the tight budget, and then this is if we see an abundance in. And so if we don't hit our target, this is what we're gonna do and this is how we're gonna execute. If we do hit what we think we're gonna hit, this is where we're gonna be, and that's typically the budget that's presented. And then if we see in excess, this is how we're gonna allocate I was just asking.
Yeah, I think the one thing that, because of your fiscal responsibility over the years, we have actually, if you remember, which we needed to do, you invested significant dollars in the exterior of this building. And we have actually made significant headway, if not all, of putting that money back into our reserves. The other thing it's done, and it's very clear that you've operated this way, my own personal view is I don't ever think it's good to slash and burn in order to hit a budget number. You've positioned yourself as a school board that if, for example, the board, let's just say this isn't going to happen, but the state said 0 EBF, we wouldn't have to completely crush programs in a single year. It would give us time. We could do it thoughtfully. We could look at budget reduction planning without having to knee jerk, for lack of a better term. So I think that's why having reserves is really important. It puts you as a board in a fiscal position to do things thoughtfully without having to rush. So, yep.
Because this district has been in a position where we didn't have reserves and we were cutting ourselves at the knees.
And I was more curious than,
No, yeah, but it's just still good information to share.
I don't think our parents would want us to, I think our parents certainly wouldn't want us to significantly cut programming. I feel very, very good due to your oversight as a board, the work in Pam, and frankly, the team on an annual basis for the last 10 years when Dr. Collins came about, done a really good job of incrementally continuing to improve the health of the school district to account for maybe sudden changes in the revenue, on the revenue side of the environment.
In addition, it's also a reminder, not that we want to or need to continually to build reserves, but a main point that's very important that was very telling is when we went to refinance our bonds, our credit rating was such that we had an attractive, healthy fund balance that our credit score supported a lower interest rate. And that's where we really want to keep that threshold. So we know there's lots of needs and wants, but we need to keep those dollars very solid there because we've had some very aggressive, attractive offers from very strong financial institutions who are interested in our business. And we never know what we might need for the future. We want to maintain that firm standing.
Okay, with that, I need a motion to approve the fiscal year 24 tentative budget as presented and approve the public hearing date of September 18th, 2023 at 6:55 p.m.
So moved.
second,
Motion by Mr. Francisco, seconded by Mr. Jewett. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Klingler,
Yes.
Miss Lee? Yes. Mr. Francisco?
Yes.
Mr. Jewett?
yes.
Mrs. McGinley?
Yes.
Mr. De Vera?
Yes.
Motion carries. All right, next up is positive occurrences.
Okay, I'm gonna do it. Two things. I'm just utterly delighted to see, without saying any names, that there's alumni coming back to be teachers for Round Lake, and we just got some really good ones, and I'm very delighted about it. So I'm calling that out as a positive occurrence. Also, we get to see the band play. They were awesome, and it was just lovely. I this year in particular, I was just so delighted to see them, and they did amazing. So I just wanted to shout that out.
I was just gonna add the National Night Out, all the villages had that and the band got to play. So it was nice to see the community out and then all the administrators and, seeing teachers and students out as we head back into school.
Yeah, I'll mirror that National Night Out. I got a chance to get over to Round Lake Parks, and Dr. Mendoza was over there, so we got to hang out with it a little bit. Also was with Dr. Mendoza for the EdRed legislative breakfast, which was absolutely awesome. A great chance to work and communicate with our legislators. And then I also throw out there just the start of athletics. Today was opening day. You saw it in the newspapers as well. That all the stories are out there. It's the whole IHSA kickoff day across the board. So we've got cross country, girls volleyball. You've got football. You've got what other sport am I missing? Girls tennis would be boys soccer. So all of the above there. Yeah, I'm blocking that out. Too many games I got to work. But no, awesome across the board, and it's just that time of year, and want to be thankful for the staff that we have as everybody gets back into it. Also, the RLAS training, just all the different opportunities we have for training, for education, and trying to provide the best that we can for our community and our students.
I'll just add the band had their preview of their show last Friday as well, and they look really good. Really excited to see the show.
And then, so Zach had been in summer programming with the Park District. One of the counselors that were there is actually is a special ed teacher at Round Lake. And she's relatively new and said that she absolutely loves it and is recruiting her friends to come to the district. So, FYI, way to go, thumbs up. Unless you're in the other district, I'm sorry, but yeah, thumbs up.
Anyone else? All right, hearing none there, we'll move on. Anyone on the board have future agenda items that we'd like to make sure we get addressed in upcoming meetings? Hearing none there, next up I will take a motion to convene in closed session as permitted by statute 5 ILCS 120/2 for the purpose of discussing the following: employment matters 5 ILCS 120/2C1, litigation 5 ILCS 120/2C11, student matters 5 ILCS 120/2C9, and closed meeting minutes 5 ILCS 120/2C21.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Klingler, seconded by Mr. Jewett. Can I get a roll call, please?
Mr. Tavera?
Yes.
Mrs. McGinley?
Yes.
Mr. Jewett?
Yes.
Mr. Francisco?
Yes.
Miss Lee?
Yes.
Mrs. Klingler?
Yes.
Motion carries. We will reconvene in closed session, and that will end our open session for the evening. So thank you all for attending. Our next regular board meeting will be on the 21st of August. We look forward to seeing you there online and in person. And everyone have a great evening.